Hello, everyone. You are watching Inside the Americas. Coming up, it's been over a year since the U.S. Supreme Court overturned Roe versus Wade, opening the way for states to ban abortions. Our reporters see what women are doing when they have no other choice. Then, with campaigning for the U.S. presidential election heating up, Monty Francis will be on set to take a look at the very geriatric influence on American politics. Top contenders Joe Biden and Donald Trump are 80 and 77 years old. And we'll take you to San Francisco, where taxi drivers may soon be a thing of the past. On the way, a look at some of the driverless cabs that are still having a bit of a bumpy ride. I'm Jeannie Godula. 15 months ago, the U.S. Supreme Court overturned Roe versus Wade, the landmark legislation that had made access to an abortion a federal right. Since then, 14 states have passed a full ban on abortion, with many more introducing tough new restrictions as well. France 24's Jessica Lemazurier looked into the challenges women face in these anti-abortion states.
Lauren Miller always dreamed of having 3 children. After the birth of her first child, she found out she was expecting twins. But an ultrasound showed that one fetus was not viable. Not only would the baby not survive, but it would endanger both Lauren and her other babies' lives. Lauren and her husband were devastated. In Texas, abortions are illegal except when the mother's life's at risk.
People were scared to say the word abortion out loud. One genetic counselor, when I was asking, what can we do, she would start a sentence and then stop.
Lauren and her husband decided to go to a clinic in a neighbouring state where abortion is legal. Lauren got a procedure known as a single fetal reduction. The second twin, Henry, survived and is now 6 months old.
Come here.
Hi. But for Lauren, the fight didn't end there. Along with 30 other women, she sued the state of Texas for endangering lives.
I don't know if I want to go through pregnancy in Texas again. It was so horrible to feel like I was just the property of the state.
In this New York clinic, calls are coming in from across the country. Abortion is still legal here.
How can I help you?
Since the Supreme Court decision to end the constitutional right to abortion, the number of patients coming to New York from other states to seek an abortion has tripled. In the US, an abortion costs between $600 and $2,600, and that's without counting travel costs. Several associations provide financial aid to women seeking abortions in another state, but for this doctor, that's not enough.
For myself, it's been very disappointing, because I know for every one patient that I see that comes from another state, there's 2 or 3 that didn't have the means to travel.
Most of these women are working class and from minority communities, and they don't know how to access information about healthcare. Reproductive rights activists are trying to change that. Yet this group is borderline illegal because in Missouri, a doctor who carries out an abortion could face a 15-year prison sentence.
They're really putting themselves in danger by participating in this program and saying that they're willing to help fight for Missourians' access to abortion automatically makes you illegal. Are we acting in an illegal way? I think we're acting in an ethical way.
The group has been lobbying for a ballot measure that would allow residents to vote on whether to legalise abortion. In the ultra-conservative states of Kansas and Kentucky, a vote already took place. Those against abortion were defeated.
The presidential election is coming up in the United States next year, and polls show that the issue of age has become a major concern for voters. President Joe Biden is 80 years old, and the leading Republican candidate, former President Donald Trump, is just 3 years younger at 77. But it's not just the presidential candidates that are the center of the debate over age in U.S. politics. Monty Francis is with me on set to talk a bit more about all of this. Monty.
Well, so Jeannie, they say a picture is worth 1,000 words. So I want to start by showing you the cover of this week's New Yorker. It's called Race for Office. It's an illustration. It shows there Donald Trump, Mitch McConnell, Nancy Pelosi, and Joe Biden. They're all competing in a race, but look, they're doing it with walkers. All of this accompanies a comment by David Remnick, the editor of the magazine, and it's called The Washington Gerontocracy. And all of this really reflects the plain truth that Washington really is, to a great extent, a place that is being run by by senior citizens. Let's start with the presidential candidates. As you mentioned, Joe Biden, he's 80 years old. He would be 86 by the end of a second term. He's kept up a pretty active and rigorous schedule. In spite of that, he attended the G20 recently. He went to Vietnam right after that, where he delivered a kind of rambling speech. He made a confusing reference to the actor John Wayne, and it was a little bit of fodder for his critics because he said he was ready to go to bed. Let's take a listen.
But I tell you what, I don't know about you, but I'm going to go to bed.
What did you talk about, Mr. Lee?
And the White House was quick to point out that the president was jet lagged, that he had been traveling all over the world. But let's not forget that these same concerns exist for Donald Trump as well. He's 77 years old. He often makes incoherent statements. He seems confused sometimes. Here he is in a recent speech where, ironically, he was calling Biden out for being cognitively impaired. But then he went on to suggest that he had beaten Barack Obama in 2016, not Hillary Clinton. And then he suggested that we were heading toward World War II.
And we did with Obama. We won an election that everyone said couldn't be won.
So how concerned are voters about this question of age when it comes to their candidates?
Well, very concerned, at least when it comes to President Biden. A recent poll found that 77% of registered voters think that he is too old to serve a second term. That same poll found that 51% were concerned about Donald Trump's age, and it's possible that those concerns about Trump might be overshadowed by all of his legal problems, facing these 91 criminal charges and these several different cases.
Are there any other presidential candidates who are using this as an issue?
Yes, notably Nikki Haley on the Republican side. She has called for mental competency tests for candidates over the age of 75 and also for term limits.
So we're also seeing these concerns about age playing out, not just with the presidential race, but at the U.S. Congress as well.
Well, yes. So the average age in the U.S. Senate is 65, and we've seen these concerns about health play out most dramatically with Mitch McConnell, the leader of the Republicans. He's 81 years old. He has frozen up before the cameras now twice, once for 30 seconds, and people were very concerned, thinking maybe he had had a stroke or something. He's brushed off these concerns about his health. His doctors say he is still okay to be on the job. On the Democratic side, you have Senator Dianne Feinstein of California. She's the oldest member of Congress. She's 90 years old. She has seemed confused at times, even having to be reminded by her staff how to vote in certain moments in time, and she has refused calls to retire. Nancy Pelosi, the former Speaker of the House, she's 83 years old. She has stepped down from leadership. She's no longer the leader of the Democrats, but she has announced that she's running for another two-year term in Congress. And then finally, you have Mitt Romney, the Republican senator from Utah. He's 76 years old, a young 76, we should say. He recently announced that his retirement, saying that he was going to step aside to make room for a new, have new young generation of politicians at the helm. But he's really an outlier here. He's an outlier in the sense that he spoke out against Donald Trump. He's one of the few Republicans to do that within the party. He's also an outlier here because there's really no indication that these older politicians are willing to step aside and let the younger generation take over, at least not during this next election cycle. Jeannie.
Monty, thank you so much for that and for that look at that very geriatric Washington. It is true. Monty Francis, thank you very much. Now, if you happen to be in San Francisco and you need to take a taxi, you might be in for a bit of a surprise. Some 600 driverless taxis are now in operation, but even in a city famous for being at the forefront of technology, these cabs are still hitting quite a few bumps in the road.
An invisible driver, dozens of sensors around the vehicle. Hundreds of these robo-taxis are taking over the streets of San Francisco and causing quite a stir.
There's like 10 of them.
Here, a traffic jam caused by a technical glitch. There, a taxi ran a red light, coming close to disaster.
Oh, he just cut in front of the guy. He just cut in front of the dude.
So, should we be scared of driverless taxis? And are they more reliable than humans or more dangerous? We went on a test ride for you. The two leading robo-taxi companies are General Motors Cruise and Alphabet's Waymo. First, you need to install the app. We ordered a Waymo, and it arrived in just a few minutes. You unlock the car with your phone, and then push a button to start the ride.
Hello, from Waymo.
The robot then explains the safety procedures.
This experience may feel futuristic, but the need to buckle up is the same as always.
There's no touching the steering wheel or the pedals. The car respects the speed limits, but doesn't always use its turn signals. It can detect a pedestrian who decides to cross the road at the last minute, though. It even offers you some music options. But when we approach these cyclists going up a hill, things start to get tricky. The robotaxi doesn't see the cyclist's hand signal, telling it to go ahead. The car seems confused by all the action, bikes on one side, cars passing on the other. Finally, the taxi decides to cross the double yellow line.
You're here. Please make sure it's clear before exiting.
We arrived just fine, but on social media, people are documenting bad experiences almost daily.
As usual, crews blocking the street over here.
This robotaxi didn't detect roadwork and ended up in fresh concrete. Others have crashed into emergency vehicles. Some residents are responding by coning these taxis, putting traffic cones on their hoods to block their sensors and keep them from moving. Others are taking more extreme action. The robots are definitely cheaper than cabs driven by humans, but do they make fewer mistakes? The problem, according to experts, is that we don't have enough data.
The companies are very reluctant to communicate information about the problems that they have. Obviously, nobody likes to air their dirty laundry in public. We need more requirements for the companies to report on the different kinds of incidents that happen.
Driverless car companies insist their vehicles are safe and say they've clocked more than 1 million kilometers without any deaths or serious injuries. The bigger challenge seems to be convincing the people of San Francisco and other cities worldwide to fully accept robotaxis.
You're watching France 24. Stay with us.
It may be the world's most famous transmission tower, but it's what we put in to the France 24 debate that makes it unique. Join us at that crossroads where differing perspectives meet to argue the point about the stories that matter to you. The debate here on France 24 and France24.com.